It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today we have a question from Gustavo who says, would you like to see UFC without weight classes? Do you think something similar to sumo would happen? Well, I would love to see a super heavyweight, no upper weight limit division in the UFC. I think that would be interesting. That would be informative. That would be fun. Make room for the giants. But as far as taking away all the weight classes, just everything's open weight from here on out. Would I like to see that? Not it particularly. If you took away all the weight classes, here's what would happen. You would have the best fighters in a weight somewhere between 220, probably 260, somewhere in that weight range. And these guys would dominate the sport. There would be no room for little guys. You might see a David versus Goliath match once in a while where David walks away the victor, but most of the time it would be those guys between 220 and 260. Now, there would be some bigger behemoths who might walk in there and surprise people, but as far as just staying power, the ability to stay competitive, the ability to move quickly, and have a reasonable amount of endurance and so on, 220, 265, that's probably pretty much the only weight we would see staying competitive in the UFC after that. Would it be like sumo? Well, sumo has far fewer variables than mixed martial arts. Sumo has a pretty simple objective. There is a ring, like an actual circular surface, and the objective is either push or throw the other guy out of that ring, or push or throw or trip, get him to go to the floor and have any part of his body besides the soles of his feet touch the ground. Then you win. And there's a lot of stuff you can't do. There's a lot of stuff you can, but basically it's grappling. Right? A lot of pushing, pulling, throwing, tripping, sweeping, etc. And there's no upper weight limit. There's no weight classes in sumo. So you can have teeny tiny guys against big guys, but most of the time it's big guys versus bigger guys. And every once in a while you have a guy who's not the biggest, who turns out to do pretty well, but he's still a pretty big guy. And if you look at pretty much any other sport with an open weight division, Jiu-Jitsu, for example, there are open weight divisions in Jiu-Jitsu, in the ADCC, for example. Andre Galvao is an interesting case in the ADCC since he won a lot of open weight championships, and he wasn't the biggest guy, but he's not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. He's a pretty big dude, pretty strong guy. But not as big as many of the competitors he went up against. So as far as open weight, there definitely is more of an ideal size, which again, in my opinion, is probably between 220 to 260 pounds. Tell me what you think. Would you like to see an open weight division in the UFC or simply do away with all weight classes? Robert M. says, I don't know how old you are, Ramsey, but you look like a young guy in the body of a 60-year-old. I look like a young guy in the body of a 60-year-old. I don't know how to interpret this comment. Hey, that's not a question. I look like a young guy in the body of a 60-year-old. I'm 43 years old. I'm constantly told that I look much younger than I am. And I think people are generally thinking that because I'm not an invalid at the age of 43, then bravo, so brave, so stunning. But you look like a 60-year-old, like a young man in a 60-year-old body. I don't know what that means. Next. Our next question comes from Anon, is that short for anonymous, who says, hey Ramsey, I recently got patellar tendonitis from BJJ. How do you do that? From BJJ. I've had patellar tendonitis pretty badly in my left knee, and I'll tell you a little bit about this. He says, do you know exercises that can cure it? I ask because I know you have seen it in... You've seen it all in the martial arts world. Okay. Patellar tendonitis. First of all, you need to isolate the cause of your patellar tendonitis. You said, I got it from BJJ. What about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gave you patellar tendonitis? Was there something that you were doing to flex, to extend the knee over and over again in your Jiu-Jitsu training that caused this? I'll tell you what caused it for me. It was drilling way too many, like 1,000 a day, round snap kicks. Now, the round snap kick it's a viable technique in certain situations. For example, if you're throwing a left liver kick. And this was what I was focusing on. I wanted to have the most devastating left liver body kick in the world. So I wanted it to be fast. I wanted it to be accurate. And so I would practice literally 1,000 times a day on the heavy bag. And after a certain number of months, during a very light sparring session, my sparring partner basically touched me in the knee, just touched me with the lightest of kicks. And I dropped to the floor. I thought my knee had snapped into pieces. I was just dying. I wasn't. It was just severe inflammation of the patellar tendon because of tendonitis, because of that repeated action of extending my leg out there and whipping it back again. So this took some time. I hobbled around on a cane for months. And I changed the way that I was throwing kicks. And so I would start to use those body snap liver kicks much more sparingly. Stopped repping out 1,000 a day. It's good to get some reps in, but 1,000 a day is a little excessive. Actually, it's a lot excessive. So think about it. You noticed after you started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that this problem arose. Was there some repetitive motion that you were doing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Maybe it was crawling around on your knees. Do you do a lot of knee wrestling in your Jiu-Jitsu class? A lot of Jiu-Jitsu gyms do this. I'm not a big fan of knee wrestling, but, you know, if I show up to a Jiu-Jitsu class and they're doing knee wrestling, okay. When in Rome, do as the Romans. But if you're crawling around on your knees a lot, this can aggravate an already existing case of patellar tendonitis. You may have had a problem and not become aware of it until you started trying to move athletically. The next thing, change your diet. Yeah, change your diet. Stop eating inflammatory foods. There are certain foods that will increase inflammation. Sugar, that's a big one. Yeah. If you have a high sugar diet, change that. Cut that crap out, man. And start eating anti-inflammatory foods. Certain saturated fats, such as natural butter, coconut oil, fish oil. In moderation, of course, these things can be very helpful to help reduce inflammation. Turmeric, certain other spices like that can be very helpful. Just Google it right now. Google anti-inflammatory foods. Start including some of those in your diet. You might have some in your cupboard right now, and you might not even realize it. And do a Google search on inflammatory foods. You might be shocked. Hey, half the stuff I'm eating is causing inflammation. Fix your sleep schedule. If you got a crappy sleep schedule, you're going to have inflammation of the joints, muscles, tendons, etc. So fix that. If you got a crappy sleep schedule, Let me repeat that again. Just don't. And then as far as exercises go, you've got to strengthen the muscles around the joint. So you're going to have to strengthen your quads, strengthen your glutes, because that's what controls the rest of the legs, basically. Strengthen your hamstrings, strengthen your calves. And you're going to have to find clever ways and clever modifications to do this while your leg is hurting, while your knee is hurting, without aggravating it and making it worse, until your legs get strong enough to do more intense versions of these exercises. Think tiny little progressions, progressive overload. Ever heard that statement before? It's a thing. I hope that helps. Let's recap once again. Isolate what caused the problem in the first place. Fix your diet. Fix your sleep schedule. And strengthen the muscles around the joint. Next. Our next question comes from our friend DK Mia, who says, Ramsey, I have pieced together bits and pieces of your story based on your videos, but I'd love to have a video of you just talking about your history with martial arts, how you started, your career fighting, starting your gym, etc. Man, I feel like I've answered this question so many times on this channel, but well, let's give you the recapped version all over again. It all started back in the day where I hiked over to the mythical Kunlun Mountains of China. I found myself in a dark cave where a dragon came out. I fought the dragon to the death, plunged my fist into its heart, pulled it out. It began to glow, giving me the power of the Iron Fist. I then met up with a fellow named Luke Cage. Together we went out and fought crime. For a price, of course. Called ourselves Heroes for Hire. Wait a minute, that was a comic book. Oh, you want my story? Our next question comes from Son of the Morning. Lucifer, is that you? Huh. Who says, hello Ramsey, I have a question. What do you think? Who do you think would win a fight between Bruce Lee and Floyd Mayweather? They're about the same size, so who do you think would come out on top? Floyd Mayweather. End of discussion. Argue all you want in the comments about how Bruce Lee was an indestructible demigod. Nah, he'd lose that fight. Sorry to say. Next question. Our next question comes from Jay, who says, what is the single foundational martial art that is best for fighting multiple opponents at once? Not that that's a situation I often find myself in, just curious. Let's assume you have to fight. Running away isn't an option, and you have to win. Whether that be incapacitating all of them or otherwise making them realize messing with you isn't worth it. Let's also assume none of them have weapons, and none of them are trained. My guess is boxing. I feel like kicking is too risky, and grappling is impractical. I hope you get a chance to answer this. Thank you. Foundational martial arts. Well, that leads us back to the origin of the term martial art. That comes from a 15th century, well, technically 16th century, because it happened in the 1500s, a 16th century sword fighting manual, where the term martial arts was introduced to the world to mean, literally, fighting in a war. The skill of warfare. The skill of combat. Not arts and crafts, but skill. Ladia, don't use the word art that way, but you gotta start doing it again. So what's this guy talking about in this old sword-fighting manual? The art of winning wars. What are wars? You have multiple people on both sides. So it is the foundational martial art for fighting multiple people. Battle formations with multiple people. They don't have weapons? Great. Even better. Let's assume you don't have weapons either. Okay, that's fine. If your battle formations and your tactics are superior, you're going to win. And if you have a small group, let's say you've got 10 guys on each side. Here's how you do it. You target the easiest one first. You take out one of them together as fast as you can, and the rest will follow. If it's a small group conflict, you take out one as quick as you can, and the others will follow. If you have a group of 10 or fewer people, and on each side, it's even, right? And then you decimate them. You take away 1/10 of their forces. It's exponentially harder for them to win at that point. You take away another one, because you've taken away one already. It's now easier to take out the next guy. Now they're down to 8. Oh man. You've got way more than a 20% advantage. You've got to Massive advantage. At that point, you're basically going to win no matter what you do. You whittle that down to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Boom, they're dead. They're done. Battle formations and simple tactics. That's the foundational martial art for taking out multiple opponents. Yeah, I know you wanted me to give you the name of a fighting style with a cute little label like Rex Kwon Do or whatever, but no, man. That crap doesn't work against multiple people. There are anecdotes about some badasses out there who beat up a couple of guys with their boxing or their kickboxing or whatever it was. And those are anecdotes. Is that high percentage stuff that is going to work for most people? No. That's stuff that worked for former world champions like Jack Dempsey when he was an older man. He was attacked by a couple of thugs and he knocked them both out with his fists because he knew what was up. Do you? Are you that good? Probably not. But with battle formations and simple tactics, you can take a group of wimps and turn them into soldiers. And you can win battles. Probably not the answer you wanted, but that's the truth. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.